I was sitting in a conference room, about to close the biggest deal of my career, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message had no words. Just a photo. My wife Victoria. In a hotel room. With another man. A man I recognized immediately. Chase Hartwell. Her family's business attorney. The guy who'd been at our wedding. Who'd shaken my hand at family dinners. Who'd called me buddy while apparently sleeping with my wife. But that's not what made me a millionaire. What made me a millionaire was what I discovered next, and what I did about it. Because Victoria's family had money. A lot of money. And they were about to learn that betraying me was the most expensive mistake they'd ever make. 3 months earlier. My name is Marcus Webb. 5 years ago, I married Victoria Sterling, the daughter of Richard Sterling, founder of Sterling Investment Group, a firm managing over $200 million. When we met, I was a broke grad student working 3 jobs. She was the rebellious daughter of old money, slumming it at a college bar where I worked as a bartender to pay my tuition. I was pulling double shifts, studying between orders, barely sleeping. She walked in one Thursday night with her prep school friends, all designer clothes and careless laughter. We fell in love. Or at least, I thought we did. Her friends hated me immediately. Wrong background. Wrong tax bracket. Wrong everything. But Victoria seemed to love that I was different from the trust fund boys she'd grown up with. She said I was real. That I had actual ambition instead of just riding on family money. Her parents hated me even more than her friends did. When Victoria first brought me home for dinner, her mother literally asked if I was the help. Her father interrogated me about my prospects and made it clear that a graduate student bartender wasn't his idea of suitable son-in-law material. But Victoria fought for us. She stood up to her parents, threatened to cut them off if they didn't accept me. We got married in a small ceremony that her family attended with obvious reluctance. Her parents came around, barely. They bought us a house in the suburbs as a wedding gift. Put both our names on the deed. For tax purposes, they said, though I suspected it was really so they could hold it over my head forever. They gave me a car, a BMW that was 2 years old, a hand-me-down from Victoria's brother. Invited me to family events where I was always introduced as Victoria's husband rather than by name. Let me exist in their world, but never truly be part of it. But I was never really part of it. At family dinners, her father would ask about my little marketing job with this condescending smile, as if my career was adorable rather than legitimate. Her mother would compare me to her friends' sons-in-law who were doctors and lawyers and investment bankers. Margaret's daughter married a neurosurgeon, she'd say. They just bought a place in the Hamptons. Victoria would laugh it off, touch my hand reassuringly, but I saw how she looked at me sometimes, like she was starting to agree with them. Like she was beginning to wonder if she'd settled. Still, I worked hard. Climbed the corporate ladder. Made decent money, though nothing compared to the Sterling family wealth. I went from junior marketing associate to senior manager, earned my promotions, brought in major clients. I thought if I just worked harder, proved myself more, climbed high enough, they'd finally see me as worthy of their daughter. I was wrong. Because Victoria had already decided I wasn't enough. It started subtly about 6 months ago. Victoria began spending more time at the office. Sterling Investment Group was expanding, she said. They needed her there late. New clients, new portfolios, her father was trusting her with bigger responsibilities. I was proud of her, encouraged her to pursue the opportunities. She bought new clothes. Expensive lingerie I never saw her wear, I discovered it once while putting away laundry, delicate lace things still with the tags on, hidden in the back of her drawer. New perfume, something sultry and sophisticated that replaced her usual light floral scent. When I commented on it, she said she was updating her professional image. She stopped asking about my day. I'd come home excited about landing a new account or winning a pitch, and she'd say, "That's great, honey," without looking up from her phone. Stopped caring about my work wins, my struggles, my ideas. When I got promoted to senior manager, something I'd worked years for, staying late countless nights, sacrificing weekends, she said, "That's great, honey," without looking up from her phone. Didn't ask about the raise, the new responsibilities, what it meant for us. Nothing. Her phone. Always face down now. Always on silent. Always password protected, when for years our phones had been open books to each other. "It's for work," she'd say when I asked about the password. Client confidentiality. Dad's really strict about security protocols. One night, I reached for her in bed. We hadn't been intimate in 3 weeks. She pulled away like I'd burned her. "I'm exhausted, Marcus. Long day. Rain check." But I'd seen her Instagram story from that afternoon. Cocktails with the girls at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday at some upscale rooftop bar. She didn't look exhausted there. She looked radiant, laughing, alive in a way she never seemed around me anymore. I told myself I was being paranoid. That the Sterling family's wealth and status were making me insecure. That I needed to trust my wife, give her space, not be that jealous husband who couldn't handle his successful wife having her own life. Then came the business dinner that changed everything. Sterling Investment Group was hosting a client appreciation dinner at an upscale hotel downtown. The kind of event where champagne flowed freely and deals worth millions were closed with handshakes. Victoria said I should come, show your face, network with the family's circle. Dad actually suggested you attend. I almost didn't go. I had a big presentation the next morning for a potential client who could double my annual quota. But Victoria insisted. Said it was important, that her father was finally making an effort to include me, that I shouldn't waste the opportunity. I arrived at 7 p.m. The event was in the hotel's ballroom, chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters in tuxedos. I checked in at reception, got my name tag, headed toward the elevators. That's when I saw them. Victoria and Chase Hartwell, the family's attorney, stepping out of an elevator together. Her lipstick smudged. His tie loosened, collar unbuttoned in a way that was far too casual for a business event. Both looking flushed and guilty, like teenagers caught sneaking in past curfew. They didn't see me. I was behind a marble pillar near the hotel's flower arrangement, just far enough out of the main traffic flow. Victoria fixed her makeup in a compact mirror, reapplying her lipstick with quick, practiced movements. Chase adjusted his tie, buttoned his collar, ran his fingers through his hair. They didn't speak. Then they walked separately toward the ballroom, 30 seconds apart, like they'd choreographed it. My chest went hollow. My hands started shaking. The hotel lobby sounds, the music, the conversations, the clink of glasses, all faded to white noise. I stood there for 5 minutes, trying to process what I'd just seen. My brain was offering innocent explanations. Maybe they'd been in a long meeting, maybe the room was hot, maybe I was imagining the guilt on their faces. But I knew. Somewhere deep down, I knew. Then I did something I'd never done before. I followed them. Watched them. And for the rest of that night, I saw the truth I'd been ignoring for months. The way Chase's hand lingered on Victoria's back when he thought no one was looking, too low, too familiar, too possessive. The way she laughed at his jokes, the laugh she used to save for me, the one that meant she was genuinely delighted. The way they disappeared to take a conference call for 20 minutes and came back looking disheveled, Victoria readying her hair, Chase's face flushed. I left without saying goodbye. Drove home in a daze, nearly ran a red light because I couldn't focus. Sat in my car in our driveway, the driveway of the house her parents bought, and felt my entire life collapse. But then something shifted. Instead of breaking, I got cold. Calculating. Strategic. If they could play games, so could I. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Spent the day researching private investigators, reading reviews, checking credentials, looking for someone who could give me what I needed. I found Davis Langley. Former FBI, specialized in corporate investigations and marital surveillance, expensive but worth it. His website promised documentation that holds up in court. He had testimonials from lawyers praising his thoroughness. His prices made my stomach turn, $5,000 retainer, $200 per hour after that. I was in his office by noon. The office was exactly what I expected: file cabinets, a cluttered desk, photos of Davis receiving commendations during his FBI days. He was in his 50s, gray hair, sharp eyes that had seen everything. "My wife is having an affair," I said, sliding Victoria's photo across his desk. Professional headshot from the Sterling Investment Group website. "With this man." I showed him Chase's photo from the same site. Davis studied both photos with the detached interest of someone who'd seen this scenario 1,000 times. "The attorney?" "Yes. Chase Hartwell. He works for my father-in-law." "How long do you think it's been going on?" "I don't know. That's what I need you to find out." "At least 6 months based on behavioral changes. Maybe longer." "You looking for a divorce?" "I'm looking for leverage," I said. "Her family is worth over $200 million. I'm a middle-class guy who married into money. If I divorce her without proof, without ammunition, they'll destroy me with lawyers. They'll make me look like I'm gold-digging, trying to take what isn't mine. I need documentation that's so airtight they'll have no choice but to settle on my terms." Davis leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, studying me. "You want to take on the Sterling family?" "I want them to pay for what she's done. And what they've done, treating me like trash for 5 years, like I'm beneath them, like I'm lucky to breathe their air." He smiled, not a friendly smile, but one of professional appreciation. "This'll cost you." "I don't care. I'll pay whatever it takes." I emptied my savings, $25,000 I'd been secretly building for years, money Victoria didn't know about, my escape fund in case the marriage ever truly fell apart, for a 2-week intensive investigation. Davis would track them, document everything, build a case that could withstand scrutiny in any courtroom. 2 weeks, Davis said. "You'll have everything you need." 2 weeks later, Davis called. "You're going to want to sit down for this." I met him at his office. My hands were sweating as I walked in. Part of me still hoped I'd been wrong, that there was some innocent explanation. He slid a thick envelope across the desk, must have been 200 pages. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. High-resolution surveillance photos that left nothing to interpretation. Victoria and Chase at hotels. 4 different hotels over 3 months. The Ritz downtown. A boutique hotel in the Arts District. A bed and breakfast 2 hours outside the city. Always afternoon check-ins. 3-hour stays. The photos showed them entering together, sometimes holding hands, once with Chase's arm around her waist. Text messages Davis's tech guy had recovered from phone records. Apparently Victoria had been backing up her messages to a cloud account with a weak password. "Chase, can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible." Victoria, "Me neither. Jake's working late again. Want to meet? Chase, when are you going to leave him? We could be so good together. Victoria, soon. I just need to figure out the financial side. Daddy's lawyers say the prenup protects most of our assets, but the house is in both our names. That's the tricky part. Chase, we'll figure it out. I make enough for both of us. Victoria, it's not about your money, baby. It's about making sure Marcus doesn't take what's mine. My hands shook as I read that last line. Making sure I didn't take what was hers, the house her parents bought, using me for 5 years while planning her exit strategy. There's more, Davis said quietly, his expression grave. He pulled out another document, financial records, bank statements, account ledgers. I did some digging into Chase Hartwell's finances. Standard background check for these cases. And he's broke. Lives beyond his means. Drives a leased BMW he can barely afford, rents an expensive apartment in the downtown high-rise that takes 60% of his salary. And here's the interesting part, he's been embezzling from Sterling Investment Group for 18 months. I looked up sharply. Embezzling? Small amounts. 20, 30,000 here and there. Covering it with creative accounting, charging personal expenses to client accounts, creating fake vendor invoices, skimming from settlements. But it adds up to over $400,000. Does Richard Sterling know? No. I don't think anyone knows except Chase. He's been very careful, using his position as the company attorney to cover his tracks. But I used to investigate white-collar crime for the FBI. The patterns are unmistakable. And you can prove this? Davis nodded, spreading out more documents. Bank records showing deposits that don't match his salary. Forged documents with his signature authorizing payments to shell companies. The whole trail. It's all here. An idea formed in my mind. Dark. Calculated. Perfect. Beautiful in its symmetry. How much would it cost to get copies of everything? Every shred of evidence. The affair, the embezzlement, all of it. I can have comprehensive packages ready by tomorrow. Multiple copies, properly documented, admissible in court. Another 5,000. Do it, I said without hesitation. I was going to burn their world down. I didn't confront Victoria. Instead, I played the perfect husband. The oblivious, grateful husband who didn't deserve his wonderful wife. I came home with flowers. Her favorite roses, the expensive ones from the boutique florist. Took her to dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. Asked about her day with genuine seeming interest. Pretended I didn't know she was texting Chase under the table, her phone lighting up every few minutes with messages she'd quickly swipe away. Meanwhile, I prepared for war. I contacted the best divorce attorney in the state, Patricia Mendez. She had a reputation for being ruthless, aggressive, the lawyer you hired when you wanted to win at all costs. Expensive as hell, $500 per hour, $50,000 retainer. She'd never lost a high-asset divorce case. I showed her everything. The photos of Victoria and Chase. The text messages discussing their affair and her plans to leave me while protecting her assets. The embezzlement evidence that showed Chase was a criminal as well as an adulterer. Patricia studied the documents for 30 minutes in silence, occasionally making notes, her expression unreadable. "This is a gold mine," Patricia finally said, looking up with something like admiration. "With infidelity this well documented, you'll get a favorable divorce settlement. The house, definitely, it's marital property regardless of who paid for it. Possibly spousal support given her family's wealth disparity and the fact that you could argue she committed marital waste by using family resources on the affair." "I want more than that," I said. She raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I want to destroy Chase Hartwell's career. I want Victoria's family to know exactly what she did. And I want to be compensated, not just fairly, but generously, for 5 years of being treated like I wasn't good enough for them, like I was a charity case they had to tolerate. Patricia smiled slowly. What did you have in mind? I told her my plan. Every detail. The Sunday dinner confrontation. The leverage with the embezzlement evidence. The settlement demand I'd make. She listened carefully, made detailed notes, asked sharp questions about timing and execution. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. This is aggressive. Potentially dangerous. The Sterling family could come after you legally, try to bury you in litigation. Are you sure you want to do this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Then let's burn their world down, Patricia said. I'll start preparing the divorce paperwork and the leverage documents. Be ready to move fast once you confront them. I chose the setting carefully, Sterling family's Sunday dinner at Richard and Margaret Sterling's estate. These dinners happened monthly, command performances where the family gathered to maintain the illusion of closeness while actually discussing business and money. Victoria had insisted I come this particular Sunday. Daddy wants to discuss some business opportunities, she'd said. Another condescending gesture, her father pretending I might be useful, maybe throwing me some scraps from the family table. We arrived at 6 p.m. The Sterling estate was a mansion in the old money neighborhood, 12,000 square feet of colonial architecture, marble floors, original artwork worth more than most people's houses. A maid answered the door. A maid. Like we were in a period drama. Richard greeted us in his study. Expensive scotch in crystal glasses. Leather chairs that probably cost more than my car. Chase was there too, holding a file folder, looking comfortable and relaxed in what should have been my father-in-law's private space. Going over some legal documents, Richard explained. End-of-year tax planning. Perfect. I couldn't have orchestrated this better if I'd tried. We all moved to the dining room. Victoria's mother Margaret was there, wearing pearls and judgment. Victoria's younger brother Christopher, who worked at an investment bank and had never spoken more than 10 words to me. Chase, playing the trusted family advisor. And me, the tolerated son-in-law. Small talk. Wine, a bottle that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Margaret's passive-aggressive comments about my quaint career, how I must be so proud of my little accomplishments. Richard barely acknowledged my presence except to ask if I'd seen the game last weekend, the kind of question you ask someone you don't really want to talk to. Then, as dessert was being served, some elaborate chocolate thing prepared by their private chef, I stood up. Before we finish, I have something I'd like to discuss. Richard looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted an important conversation. Can it wait, Marcus? We're eating. No, sir. It can't. I pulled out a manila envelope from my briefcase. I think everyone here needs to see this. The table went quiet. Even the maid serving coffee froze. I walked to Richard's end of the table and placed photographs in front of him. One by one. Slowly. Victoria and Chase. Hotel lobbies. Kissing in his car. Entering rooms together. In one photo, Chase's hand was under Victoria's skirt while they waited for an elevator. The table went absolutely silent. You could hear the air conditioning. Richard's face turned purple. His hands trembled as he picked up the photos. What the hell is this? Your daughter has been having an affair with your attorney for at least 3 months. Probably longer. These are from 4 different hotels. Multiple occasions. I have dozens more photos, plus text messages where they discuss the affair and plan my wife's eventual exit from our marriage. Victoria's face drained of all color. Marcus. I'm not done. I placed another set of documents in front of Richard. Financial records, bank statements, highlighted sections showing irregularities. These are bank records showing that Chase Hartwell has embezzled over $400,000 from Sterling Investment Group over the past 18 months. Fake vendor invoices. Personal expenses charged to client accounts. Creative accounting to hide the theft. Chase stood up so fast his chair fell backward with a crash. That's a lie. Richard, he's lying, this is fake, fabricated. Sit down, Richard said, his voice like ice. He was studying the documents with the intense focus of a man who'd built a fortune by spotting financial irregularities, who could read a balance sheet better than most people could read a book. His face got progressively darker with each page he turned. His hand tightened on his scotch glass until I thought it might shatter. These transactions. Richard's voice shook with barely controlled rage. These withdrawals. Chase, what the hell is this? This vendor, Hartwell Consulting LLC, that's your company. These expenses. I can explain, Richard, please, let me explain. Explain. Richard stood up so abruptly his chair crashed backward. He slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal and china jump. You've been stealing from my company. While I trusted you. While you sat at my dinner table. While I welcomed you into my home and introduced you to my clients. And while he was sleeping with your daughter, I added coldly. Don't forget that part. Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Victoria started crying, mascara running down her face. Christopher sat frozen, staring at his sister with disgust. Richard turned to Victoria. Is this true? All of it? She couldn't look at him. Just nodded, sobbing, her whole body shaking. How long? 4 months, she whispered. 4 months. Richard's voice was deadly quiet now, which somehow was more terrifying than his shouting. You've been betraying your husband, in my company, during work hours, with my attorney, for 4 months. While he worked to support you, while he tried to earn respect from this family, while he endured your mother's insults at these dinners. Daddy, I made a mistake. Get out, Richard said. What? Get out of my house. Now. Victoria looked at her mother for help. Margaret's face was stone. No sympathy there, just cold disappointment and social embarrassment. Daddy, please, I can explain, we can fix this. You've humiliated this family. Humiliated your husband. Destroyed my professional relationship with my attorney. And you, he turned to Chase with pure hatred. You're fired. Effective immediately. And I'm pressing charges for embezzlement. My lawyers will ensure you spend the next decade in prison. Chase tried to run. Actually bolted for the door like a coward. Richard's security, 2 men who'd been standing discreetly in the hallway, stopped him before he made it 10 feet. They held him firmly as he struggled and protested his innocence. Then Richard turned to me. And what he said next changed everything. Marcus, Richard said, his voice still shaking with rage but now with something else too, maybe respect, maybe recognition. I owe you an apology. I said nothing. Just waited. Let the silence stretch. Power comes from letting other people fill the void. Richard cleared his throat. My daughter has disgraced herself and this family. You deserved better than this. You deserved better than how we've treated you. Yes, I said calmly. I did. I need to know, what do you want? Name it. This was the moment. The moment I'd been planning for, rehearsing in my mind. Everything depended on how I played this. I want a divorce, I said calmly. And I want to be compensated fairly. The house is yours, Richard said immediately. It's worth $800,000. I'll sign it over completely. No fight. My lawyers will handle the transfer. I appreciate that, I said. But it's not enough. The room went very quiet. Christopher leaned forward. Margaret's eyes widened. Victoria looked up from her crying. What do you mean? Richard asked carefully. For 5 years, I've been part of this family. I've endured your subtle insults, your condescension, your constant reminders that I'm not good enough. Your daughter treating me like I wasn't worthy of her. Your wife comparing me unfavorably to everyone else's sons-in-law at every opportunity. And now I find out she's been cheating on me with your employee, an employee who was stealing from you, using your money to fund his lifestyle and impress your daughter. I understand you're upset. I'm not upset, Richard. I'm calculating. I pulled out another document that Patricia had prepared. This is a potential lawsuit. Sexual harassment. Hostile work environment. Your attorney, your employee, engaged in an inappropriate relationship with your daughter, also your employee, that created a hostile environment at Sterling Investment Group. As the wronged spouse who was present at company events where this affair was being conducted, I have standing to sue your company for damages. Emotional distress. Loss of consortium. The whole package. Patricia had explained that this lawsuit was legally shaky at best, but Richard didn't need to know that. He just needed to believe I'd do it. You're bluffing, Richard said, but his voice was uncertain. Try me, I said, meeting his eyes. Take this to court. Let it become public. Let your clients, your wealthy, conservative clients who value discretion and family values, read about how Sterling Investment Group's attorney was stealing from the company while sleeping with the boss's daughter. Let them read the text messages. See the photos. Watch your reputation crumble in real time. See how many of them stay when the scandal breaks. Richard's jaw clenched. He was doing the math in his head, the cost of lost clients, damaged reputation, years of rebuilding trust. What do you want? He asked quietly. $2 million. The room exploded. Are you insane? Victoria screamed, jumping to her feet. $2 million. You're trying to rob us. That's extortion. Christopher shouted. Dad, he's extorting you. Call the police. Margaret looked faint, fanning herself with her napkin. But Richard held up his hand. Silence fell. He was thinking, calculating, his business mind overriding his emotion. This was why he'd built a fortune, he could see past anger to the bottom line. Explain your number, he said. I smiled. Time to close the deal. This was what I'd been preparing for. $2 million is less than 1% of your total assets, I said calmly, my voice steady. It's also less than what a court battle would cost you, in legal fees, lost business, and reputation damage. A scandal like this could cost you $20-30 million in lost clients alone. You want me to pay you $2 million to keep quiet? Richard asked. No. I want you to pay me $2 million as a settlement for the damage your family has caused me. Call it pain and suffering. Call it compensation for 5 years of disrespect and my wife's betrayal. Call it whatever lets you sleep at night. But that's my price for making this go away quietly. And if I refuse? Then I file the lawsuit tomorrow morning. It'll be in the business section by afternoon. Your investors will start asking questions. Your clients will start moving their portfolios to competitors who don't have sex scandals and embezzlement problems. And Sterling Investment Group, the company you spent 40 years building from nothing, will be permanently associated with corruption and affairs. Every Google search of your company name will bring up this scandal. Richard stared at me for a long time. I could see him running scenarios, calculating risks and costs. Or, I continued, you pay me $2 million, I sign an NDA agreeing never to discuss any of this publicly, the divorce goes through quietly with me taking the house, and no one outside this room ever knows what happened. Your reputation stays intact. Your business continues. Chase goes to prison for the embezzlement, but the affair never becomes public knowledge. And I disappear from your family forever. You're a bastard, Victoria spat through her tears. No, I said, turning to her calmly. I'm a man who learned from the best. Your father didn't build a fortune by being nice. He built it by being strategic, by reading the room, by knowing when he had leverage. I'm just applying his lessons. I learned from watching him negotiate. I should thank him for that. Richard almost smiled at that. Almost. A tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth that suggested appreciation despite himself. $1 million, he said. $2 million, I countered immediately. Or the lawsuit files tomorrow morning. $1.5 million. Final offer. I pretended to think about it, let the silence stretch for 10 seconds. $1.7 million. And you cover all divorce proceedings costs, including my attorney's fees. Otherwise, the $2 million stands. Richard studied me. For the first time in 5 years, he was looking at me like an equal. Like someone who understood the game. He extended his hand. Deal. $1.7 million plus legal fees. We shook on it. Victoria collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Her mother looked disgusted, at her daughter, not at me. Christopher was staring at me with something like respect. Chase, still being held by security, looked like he might vomit. I just negotiated the most important deal of my life. The next 2 weeks moved with brutal efficiency. Richard's attorneys, not Chase, obviously, drafted a comprehensive settlement agreement. Patricia reviewed every clause, negotiated harder terms, made sure I was protected from every angle. The final agreement included financial terms. $1.7 million paid in full within 30 days via wire transfer to an account of my choosing. House transferred entirely to my name, appraised value, $800,000, all transfer costs paid by Sterling family. BMW kept by me, appraised value, $60,000, with title transferred fully. All divorce costs covered by Sterling family including Patricia's fees, approximately $75,000. No spousal support owed by me to Victoria, she signed under pressure from her father. Legal protections. Comprehensive NDA protecting all parties from discussing the affair, embezzlement, or any details of the settlement. All parties agree never to disparage each other publicly or privately. I agree to drop all potential lawsuits against Sterling Investment Group. Signed away any future claims against Sterling family or company. In exchange, I agreed to never discuss the affair or embezzlement publicly. Sign away any future financial claims against the Sterling family. Not interfere with criminal prosecution of Chase Hartwell. Victoria had to sign too. Her father gave her absolutely no choice. I was there when Richard laid it out for her in his study. Sign it or you're cut off completely, Richard told her, his voice cold. No trust fund. No inheritance. No job at the company. Nothing. You'll be on your own with your disgrace and your mistakes. She signed, crying through the whole process, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. She tried to meet my eyes once, maybe looking for mercy or sympathy. I looked through her like she was glass. Chase, meanwhile, was arrested within 48 hours. Richard pressed full charges for embezzlement with the full force of his legal team behind the prosecution. With the evidence Davis had gathered, bank records, forged documents, the entire paper trail, Chase's lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial. Got 6 years in prison and was ordered to repay the $400,000, which he couldn't afford since he had maybe $30,000 in actual assets. The rest was all leased or borrowed. His law license was permanently revoked. His career, his reputation, his future, all destroyed. Victoria tried to contact me during this period. Dozens of calls. Texts begging for another chance, for forgiveness, claiming she still loved me. Emails saying she'd made a terrible mistake, that Chase meant nothing, that we could rebuild. I blocked everything. Changed my number. Patricia handled all communications. My attorney handled everything. I never had to see Victoria again after that nightmare dinner. 30 days later, exactly as promised, the money hit my account. I checked my phone banking app 3 times to make sure it was real. Balance, $1,700,000. I stared at that number for a long time, sitting in my car outside my office. Marcus Webb, millionaire. All because my cheating wife had betrayed the wrong man. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks after that nightmare family dinner. No contested hearings. No courtroom drama. No he said she said. Richard made sure it went through quickly and quietly, using his influence and his lawyers to expedite every step. The judge barely asked questions. When you have lawyers as expensive as Patricia representing you, things move smoothly. Victoria got nothing. No house. No money. No car. Just her personal belongings and whatever was in her own bank account, about $40,000 from her salary at Sterling Investment Group. Her father cut her off from the family money. Until you prove you've learned something about integrity and consequences, he told her coldly. The trust fund that was supposed to vest when she turned 35? Frozen indefinitely. Her position at the company? Demoted. She had to move into a small apartment in a mediocre neighborhood. Had to keep working at Sterling Investment Group, because despite everything, her father wasn't going to let the family business suffer because of her mistakes, and firing her would raise questions. But she was demoted from senior analyst to administrative assistant. No more executive privileges. No more corner office. No more client meetings. No more business travel. She became just another employee, and everyone there knew why. I heard through the grapevine that people whispered when she walked by. That she ate lunch alone. That her former friends at the company avoided her. Meanwhile, I sold the house. With the real estate market in full boom, it went for $975,000. Nearly $200,000 more than retry continue at the appraised value. I'd gotten lucky with timing, multiple offers, bidding war, cash buyers desperate for property in that neighborhood. Combined with the $1.7M settlement, minus taxes and legal fees, I had about $2.3 million in liquid assets sitting in my account. More money than I'd ever imagined having. More money than my parents had earned in their entire working lives combined. I quit my marketing job. The one her family had always mocked as my little career, the job where I'd worked 60-hour weeks trying to prove myself. I gave 2 weeks' notice, trained my replacement, and walked out of that office for the last time with my head high. And I did something I'd been dreaming about for years. I started my own marketing consultancy. With my industry experience and now the capital to invest in it properly, I launched Web Strategic Consulting. I rented office space in a good building downtown. Hired a business manager, a talented designer, 2 junior account executives who reminded me of myself years ago, hungry and underestimated. I invested in proper equipment, software, a professional website. I leveraged every contact I'd built over 6 years in the industry. Called former clients, pitched them on working with my boutique firm instead of the corporate behemoth. Offered more personalized service, more creative campaigns, better attention to detail. I landed my first major client within 2 weeks, a tech startup that needed rebranding. Then a regional restaurant chain. Then a healthcare company looking to modernize their image. I hired top talent, people who'd been overlooked by bigger agencies, who had something to prove. We worked hard, delivered exceptional results, built a reputation for being the scrappy upstart that outperformed the established firms. Within 18 months, my consultancy was billing $3 million annually. My personal take after expenses and payroll, $800,000 per year. Add that to my investment portfolio growing with the initial $2.3 million, I'd put most of it in a diversified portfolio of index funds and real estate investments, and I was now worth close to $4 million. A legitimate millionaire. Self-made after the initial settlement. Built from the ruins of my broken marriage. I heard through mutual friends what happened to Victoria over the next year. I didn't seek out this information, but it found me anyway. Our social circles still overlapped, and people loved sharing gossip about a fall from grace. The affair became an open secret in their wealthy social circle despite the NDA. People talk, especially among the wealthy who thrive on scandal and drama. Word spread through country clubs, charity galas, private dinner parties. She became persona non grata almost overnight. Invitations stopped coming. Friends she'd known since prep school suddenly couldn't meet for lunch. Her phone went silent. She tried dating but couldn't maintain relationships. Word got around that she'd cheated on her husband and cost her family nearly $2 million in settlements. Men from her social class didn't want the baggage. Men from other backgrounds didn't trust her after hearing the story. She put on weight. I saw photos on social media before she locked down her accounts. Started drinking heavily according to mutual acquaintances who'd seen her at bars, alone, ordering wine at 3 p.m. Developed a reputation for showing up drunk at the few events she was still invited to, causing scenes, crying about how her life had fallen apart. Her father kept her employed but at arm's length. She worked in a back office at Sterling Investment Group, processing paperwork, filing documents, nowhere near clients or decision-making or anything that mattered. A humiliating demotion from her former position where she'd been groomed to eventually take over parts of the business. One night, about a year after the divorce, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, maybe curiosity, maybe some lingering connection to my past, I answered. Marcus? It was Victoria. She sounded drunk, her words slightly slurred. What do you want, Victoria? I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For Chase, for lying, for how I treated you, for all of it. Okay. Silence. Then, that's it. Just okay. What do you want me to say? That I forgive you. I don't. That I understand. I don't. You made your choices, Victoria. You chose to cheat. You chose to disrespect our marriage. You chose to treat me like I wasn't good enough. Those were your decisions. You destroyed my life, she said, her voice breaking into sobs. No, I said calmly, feeling nothing. You destroyed your life. You cheated. You humiliated your family. You threw away a loyal husband for a criminal who's now in prison. I just made sure you paid for it. I protected myself and demanded fair compensation. Everything that happened to you is the consequence of your own actions. My father hates me. My family won't talk to me. Everyone thinks I'm a joke. I have no friends left. You are a joke, Victoria. You threw away a loyal husband for an embezzler who's now in prison. You humiliated yourself and your family. I just made sure everyone knew about it. I just made sure the truth came out. I loved you, she whispered. No, you didn't. You loved having me as a backup plan. You loved knowing I'd always be there while you did whatever, or whoever, you wanted. You loved feeling superior to me because your family had money and mine didn't. That's not love. That's selfishness. That's using someone. She started sobbing harder, the sound ugly and broken through the phone. Goodbye, Victoria. Don't call again. Don't contact me. We're done. We've been done. I blocked the number immediately and never heard from her again. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No pity. Just emptiness where she used to be. About 18 months after the divorce, I was at a business networking event in the city. One of those evening mixers where professionals gather to make connections, share cards, discuss potential collaborations. My consultancy was thriving. I was wearing a custom-tailored suit that actually fit properly, not off the rack like I'd worn for years. Driving a Tesla Model S, living in a penthouse downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Life was good. Better than good. That's when I saw her. Elena Martinez. She was presenting at the conference on a panel about entrepreneurship and risk-taking. A tech entrepreneur who'd sold her startup for $8 million 3 years earlier and was now angel investing in other companies, helping other founders avoid the mistakes she'd made. She was brilliant during the Q&A, funny in a sharp, intelligent way. Beautiful, but more than that, confident, self-possessed, comfortable in her own skin. And most importantly, she'd built her own success. She didn't need anyone's money. She'd earned everything she had. We got coffee after her presentation. Talked about building businesses from scratch, about the loneliness of entrepreneurship, about taking risks when everyone thinks you'll fail. Then dinner the next week. Then we started dating. Elena knew about my divorce. I was upfront about it from the start. I told her the whole story over wine one night about a month in. The affair, the settlement, everything. Your ex-wife sounds like an idiot, she said, swirling her wine. She was, I said. But she also taught me something valuable. What's that? Never settle. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. And never, ever trust someone who hasn't earned it. Trust is a gift, not a right. Elena raised her glass. I'll drink to that. And also, never marry someone who can't see your worth. 6 months later, I proposed. We were on a trip to Barcelona, walking through Parc Güell at sunset. Nothing elaborate, just me, her, and a ring I'd chosen myself. She said yes without hesitation. We were married in a small ceremony, nothing like the Sterling family circus with hundreds of guests I didn't know. Just close friends, genuine people who'd supported us, real celebration. 20 people total. A restaurant we both loved. Personal vows we'd written ourselves. And standing there, watching Elena walk down the aisle in a simple dress she'd picked out herself, I realized something profound. Victoria's betrayal had been the best thing that ever happened to me. It had freed me from a life of trying to prove myself to people who would never value me. It had given me the capital and motivation to build something of my own. And it had cleared the path for me to find someone who actually loved and respected me. 2 years after the divorce, Web Strategic Consulting had grown into a powerhouse in the regional marketing scene. Annual revenue, $8 million. Staff of 25. Offices in 2 cities. Major corporate clients including 3 Fortune 500 companies. My personal net worth, $6.5 million. I'd invested wisely beyond just the business, real estate properties that generated rental income, a diversified portfolio of index funds and bonds, equity stakes in 3 startups including one of Elena's investments. My financial advisor told me I could retire at 40 if I wanted to. Elena's ventures were thriving too. Her investment portfolio had grown to $12 million, and she was becoming known as one of the top angel investors in the tech space, someone founders wanted backing them. Together, our combined net worth pushed toward $18 million. We were wealthy by any reasonable standard. We bought a house in the hills, not as ostentatious as the Sterling estate, but beautiful, modern, with a pool and a view. We traveled first class to Europe and Asia. We donated to charities that actually mattered to us. We lived well without the pretension that had defined the Sterling family. But the best part? I'd done it without the Sterling family's help. Sure, the $1.7 million settlement gave me the initial capital, the seed money that let me start the business. But everything after that, the business success, the smart investments, the wealth accumulation, the reputation, that was all me. I'd proven what Richard Sterling never wanted to admit, I was always good enough. Better than good enough. I had the intelligence, the work ethic, the strategic mind. I'd always had it. His daughter had just been too privileged and blind to see it. Too focused on status and appearances to recognize actual worth. One day, about 3 years post-divorce, I got an email from Richard Sterling himself. I stared at the sender name for a full minute before opening it. Subject: Congratulations. Marcus. I saw the article about Web Strategic in the Business Journal. Impressive growth. You've built something substantial. The profile mentioned your client list. I recognized several names. You're competing with firms 10 times your size and winning. I was wrong about you. You were always more than I gave you credit for. I judged you on your background rather than your capabilities. That was my mistake. If you're ever interested in discussing potential collaboration opportunities, my door is open. Sterling Investment Group could use a marketing firm with your creativity and client relationships. Richard. I stared at that email for a long time. Read it 3 times. 5 years ago, Richard Sterling had looked at me like I was beneath his daughter. Like I was a charity case his family had to tolerate. He'd asked about my little marketing job with barely disguised condescension. He'd made it clear I wasn't worthy. Now he was asking to work with me. Admitting he was wrong. Offering collaboration like we were equals. I hit reply and typed 3 words. Not interested. Marcus. Then I deleted his contact information and blocked his email. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some people don't deserve second chances, even when they finally realize your value. 3 years after the divorce, Victoria showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant buzzed me, sounding uncertain. Mr. Webb, there's a Victoria Sterling here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment but says it's personal and important. I almost said no. Almost had security escort her out. But curiosity got the better of me, and maybe some part of me wanted to see how far she'd fallen. Send her in. She looked different. Older than 33 should look. Thinner in an unhealthy way, like she wasn't eating properly. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by off-the-rack business casual from department stores. Her hair was simpler, no expensive highlights or styling. Her makeup minimal. The diamonds she used to wear were gone. She looked ordinary. Forgettable. Just another person struggling through life. "Marcus," she said quietly, standing awkwardly by the door. "Thank you for seeing me." I gestured to a chair across from my desk. She sat slowly, carefully, like she was afraid of taking up too much space. "What do you want, Victoria?" "I'm in AA now," she said, meeting my eyes with effort. "Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober for 4 months. Part of my recovery, part of the 12 steps, is making amends to people I've hurt. I'm not interested in amends. I know. But I need to say this anyway." She took a shaky breath. "What I did to you was unforgivable. The cheating, the lying, the way I treated you during our marriage, all of it. You deserved better. You deserved respect and loyalty and love, and I gave you none of those things." "Yes," I said simply. "I did deserve better. I was stupid and selfish and entitled. I threw away a good man because I was bored and thought I deserved more. I didn't appreciate what I had until it was gone. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it. You deserved to hear it 3 years ago, but I was too proud to admit I was wrong. Too busy blaming you for ruining my life instead of taking responsibility for my own choices. I'm not too proud anymore." "Prison," she paused. "Not literal prison, but my life became a prison of my own making. And in that prison, I finally learned to be honest with myself." I studied her. She looked sincere. Broken, humbled, but sincere. "Okay," I said. "Apology noted. Anything else? I saw that you got married. Elena seems lovely." I looked her up. "I'm sorry, I know that's weird, but I did. She's accomplished and successful and seems like an actual good person." "She is." "I'm happy for you," Victoria said, and I actually believed her. "You deserve happiness. You deserved it all along. What about you? Are you happy?" She laughed bitterly, a sound without humor. "I'm sober. I have a job, not a good job, but a job. I'm in therapy twice a week. I'm working on not hating myself every day. Happy? Not yet. But I'm working on it. That's all I can do. Good luck with that." She stood to leave, then paused at the door, her hand on the handle. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you ever think about what we had? Before everything fell apart. The early days when we first met." I considered the question honestly, really thought about it. "No," I said. "I don't. That version of me died the day I found out about Chase. The man you knew, insecure, desperate for approval, willing to accept disrespect, is gone. And frankly, I prefer who I am now." She nodded slowly. "So do I. The old Victoria was a nightmare. I'm trying to build someone better. Then I genuinely hope you succeed with that." She left quietly, closing the door softly behind her. And I never saw her again. I learned later, through the same network of mutual acquaintances, what happened to Chase Hartwell. He served 4 years of his 6-year sentence in a minimum security federal prison. Got out on good behavior, apparently became a model prisoner who taught other inmates about financial literacy, ironic, given his crimes. His law license was permanently revoked by the state bar. No firm would touch him after embezzlement and the affair scandal. Both had become part of the public record during his plea hearing. When potential employers Googled his name, the first results were news articles about his conviction. He tried to rebuild, worked as a paralegal for a small personal injury firm making $35,000 a year, then as a document reviewer for a legal temp agency, barely making $40,000. Jobs that required law knowledge but not a law license. Jobs that paid a fraction of what he'd once earned. His ex-wife, He'd been married before, I learned, had remarried a surgeon and wanted nothing to do with him. His 2 kids from that marriage refused to see him. They'd changed their last names, wanted no connection to their criminal father. Last I heard, he was living in a small 1-bedroom apartment 2 hours outside the city, working at a legal tech startup for entry-level pay, taking the bus to work because he couldn't afford a car. The man who'd once driven a leased BMW and worn $2,000 suits was now living like a broke college student in his 40s. And Victoria? The woman he'd destroyed his career for, the woman he'd thought was worth risking everything. She wouldn't even take his calls. When he tried to reach out after his release, she blocked his number. She wanted nothing to do with the man who represented her biggest mistake. Karma, it turns out, doesn't need my help. It's patient. It's thorough. And it's absolutely devastating when it finally arrives. The Sterling family never fully recovered from the scandal, even though it remained mostly private. Richard's business survived, Sterling Investment Group continued to operate and even grew. But his reputation took a permanent hit among those who knew. Wealthy clients whispered about the drama in his family, the personal issues that had led to his attorney's sudden departure. Some moved their portfolios elsewhere, preferring firms without complications. Margaret Sterling developed health issues, high blood pressure, anxiety, insomnia. Her doctor said it was stress-related. She blamed Victoria for everything, barely spoke to her daughter at family gatherings, introduced her to no one. Victoria's brother Christopher distanced himself completely. Wouldn't invite her to his wedding 2 years later. Cut her out of family photos. Told friends he was an only child rather than explain his sister's disgrace. Richard eventually reconciled with Victoria on some level. She was still his daughter, blood still mattered, but their relationship was forever changed. No more executive positions. No more family trust fund access. No more grooming her for leadership. Just a middle management job and a small allowance that covered rent and groceries. She became what she'd always feared, ordinary. Invisible. Irrelevant. Meanwhile, Richard and I had one final interaction about 4 years after the divorce. He showed up at a charity gala Elena and I were attending, a fundraiser for educational programs we both supported. Our first time seeing each other since the divorce finalization. He approached me at the bar during a break between speeches. Looked older, more gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. "Marcus. You look well. Successful." "Richard," I nodded politely but without warmth. "I meant what I said in that email. You've built something impressive. Web Strategic is on everyone's radar now. Thank you. I was wrong about you. I judged you on superficial factors, your background, your starting salary, instead of your actual capabilities. That was foolish." "Yes," I said simply. "It was. But that's not my problem anymore." He smiled ruefully, accepting the dismissal. "Fair enough." He paused, swirling his scotch. "For what it's worth. I'm glad my daughter's mistake didn't destroy you. Most men would have been broken by what she did. The betrayal, the humiliation. Most men don't have your daughter's betrayal as motivation," I said. "She taught me that the only person you can truly depend on is yourself. That you can't wait for others to see your value, you have to build something undeniable. Best lesson I ever learned." Richard raised his glass slightly. "To hard lessons, then." I didn't raise mine. Just nodded acknowledgement. He walked away into the crowd. And I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no lingering pain. Just complete indifference. That's how I knew I'd truly moved on. 5 years after the divorce, my life had transformed so completely that my marriage to Victoria felt like something that had happened to a different person. Web Strategic Consulting was now worth $12 million based on offers we'd received from larger agencies wanting to acquire us. We had offices in 3 cities, 80 employees, major corporate clients across multiple industries. Annual revenue had hit $15 million. My personal net worth, $8 million. Elena and I had 2 kids now, a daughter named Sophia, 3 years old, bright and curious and fearless. And a son named Daniel, 1 year old, just learning to walk and getting into everything. We lived in a beautiful home that we'd chosen together, not some house bought by disapproving in-laws. We drove cars we'd selected based on what we liked, not what we'd been given as charity. We took vacations to Europe and Asia, teaching our kids about different cultures, creating memories rather than maintaining appearances. But the wealth wasn't what mattered most anymore. What mattered was that I'd built it myself. That it was real, earned, based on actual value I'd created in the world. Sure, Victoria's betrayal and the settlement gave me the initial push, the seed capital that made everything possible. But everything after that, the business acumen, the strategic decisions, the client relationships, the hard work, the risk-taking, that was all mine. I'd proven to myself that I didn't need the Sterling family. I didn't need their money or their name or their connections or their approval. I was successful because I was capable. Because I was smart and strategic and willing to work harder than anyone else. Always had been. Victoria had just been too privileged and blind to see it. One evening, I was putting Sophia to bed when she asked, "Daddy, were you always rich?" I smiled, pulling her blanket up. "No, sweetheart. I used to be poor. Well, not poor exactly, but I didn't have much money. What happened? I worked hard. I was smart. And I turned a really bad thing into something good." "What bad thing?" "That's a story for when you're older. Much older." She yawned, her eyes already closing. "Okay, Daddy. Love you. Love you too, baby." As I watched her fall asleep, I thought about everything that had led me here. The humiliation of being the poor son-in-law. The betrayal of discovering the affair. The rage that had driven me to document everything. The calculated revenge that had secured my settlement. And I realized, I wouldn't change any of it. Because without Victoria's betrayal, I'd still be that insecure guy trying to prove himself to people who would never respect him. I'd still be working 60 hours a week at someone else's company, making decent money but never breaking through. I'd still be accepting subtle insults at family dinners, still be driving a hand-me-down car, still be living in a house that reminded me daily that I hadn't earned it. Victoria's betrayal had freed me to become who I was always capable of being. 7 years after the divorce, I got a call that brought everything full circle. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. "Hello? Marcus? It's Margaret Sterling. Victoria's mother." I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce. The sound of her voice brought back memories I'd largely buried. "Mrs. Sterling. What can I do for you?" "I'm calling about Victoria." Her voice sounded strained, older. My stomach tightened instinctively. "Is she okay?" "She's struggling. Financially, emotionally, in every way. Richard cut her off completely 6 months ago after she relapsed with drinking. She lost her job at Sterling Investment Group last month. She's about to lose her apartment. She has nowhere to go. I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't see how this involves me. She needs help, Marcus. Real help. She's drowning and we've run out of options. I thought perhaps you might be willing to. To what? Give her money? Take her in? What exactly are you asking? I want you to remember that she was your wife for 5 years. That there were good times before everything fell apart. That she's still a human being who's suffering. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice level. Mrs. Sterling, I'm going to say this as kindly as I can. Victoria made choices. She chose to cheat on me. She chose to humiliate me and herself. She chose to prioritize her affair over our marriage. Those choices had consequences. Natural, predictable consequences. I'm sorry she's struggling, but I'm not responsible for fixing her life. She's lost everything, Marcus. Everything. No, I corrected gently but firmly. She threw everything away. There's a difference. She had a loyal husband, a good life, opportunities most people never get. She chose to destroy all of that. I didn't do that to her. She did it to herself. You got your revenge, Margaret said, her voice shaking now. You took millions from our family. You destroyed her reputation. You made sure everyone knew what she'd done. Isn't that enough? Can't you find it in your heart to show some compassion now? I didn't destroy her reputation, I said calmly. She did that herself by having an affair with your family's attorney. I just made sure people knew the truth instead of letting her rewrite history. As for the money, your husband agreed to that settlement to protect his business reputation. That was his choice, not mine. And it was less than 1% of your family's wealth. So you'll do nothing. Just let her fall further. I'll do exactly what Victoria did when she was betraying me. I'll put myself and my family first. I have a wife I love and 2 children I'm responsible for. Victoria is not my problem anymore. She stopped being my problem the day she chose Chase Hartwell over our marriage. Margaret was silent for a long moment. Then, coldly, I hope you can live with yourself. I sleep very well, Mrs. Sterling. Better than I did when I was married to your daughter. Better than I did when I was spending every family dinner being reminded I wasn't good enough. My conscience is clear. I hung up. Elena looked at me from across the room where she'd been pretending not to listen. Everything okay? Victoria's mother wants me to help her, I said. Are you going to? No. Elena nodded, no judgment in her expression. Good. She made her choices. You're not responsible for the consequences. That was the last time anyone from the Sterling family ever contacted me. 10 years after the divorce, I was invited to speak at my old university's business school. The topic, building success from failure. Standing at that podium, looking at a room full of young faces eager for wisdom and shortcuts, I felt the weight of everything I'd been through. 10 years ago, I was married to a woman from a wealthy family. I was never good enough in their eyes, wrong background, wrong income level, wrong everything. I worked hard, climbed the corporate ladder, tried to prove myself worthy. But they still saw me as beneath them. I paused, scanning the audience. Then my wife betrayed me. Had an affair with her family's attorney. And in that moment of devastation, standing in a hotel lobby watching her fix her makeup after being with another man, I had a choice, be a victim or be strategic. The room was completely silent now. I chose strategy. I documented everything, hired a private investigator, gathered evidence, built an airtight case. I hired the right professionals, a divorce attorney who knew how to leverage what I discovered. I negotiated a settlement that gave me capital to start my own business. And I turned that betrayal into the foundation of a multi-million-dollar company. A student raised her hand. Do you regret how you handled it? Some might say you were vindictive. I smiled, expecting this question. I was vindictive. Absolutely. I wanted them to pay for what they'd done. But I was also smart and strategic. Here's what I learned. When someone betrays you, especially someone who's supposed to love you, you have every right to protect yourself and demand compensation for the damage they've caused. That's not being vindictive, that's being strategic. That's refusing to be a victim. Another student, what happened to your ex-wife? She's living with the consequences of her choices, I said simply. As we all do. As we all must. She chose infidelity over loyalty. She chose temporary excitement over lasting partnership. She chose to disrespect someone who loved her. And she's paying the price for those choices every day. After the talk, students crowded around asking questions about entrepreneurship, about overcoming setbacks, about turning pain into motivation. One young woman waited until everyone else had left. Mr. Webb, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you ever feel guilty? About taking so much from her family? About how hard her life became? I considered the question carefully, giving it the thought it deserved. No. And here's why. Her family looked down on me for 5 years. They made me feel small and insufficient. They treated me like charity they had to tolerate. When their daughter betrayed me, they would have crushed me in a divorce if they could have, used their money and lawyers to make sure I got nothing. I simply made sure I had the leverage to protect myself and be compensated fairly for 5 years of disrespect and my wife's infidelity. If that makes me ruthless, then I'm ruthless. But I'm also a multimillionaire who built a successful company and has a family that actually loves me. So I'll take ruthless over doormat any day. She smiled slowly. That's actually really empowering. I'm tired of being told women should forgive and forget and take the high road when someone hurts us. The high road is overrated, I said. Sometimes the strategic road is better. As I drove home that night, watching the city lights blur past, I felt complete peace. The anger was gone. The pain was gone. Even the satisfaction of revenge had faded. Just contentment remained. I'd built something real. Something lasting. Something that was entirely mine. 12 years after the divorce, I saw Victoria one last time. I was at a coffee shop in the financial district, waiting for a client meeting. Elena and the kids were meeting me for lunch afterward. Sophia was 12 now and wanted to see my office, show her friends where her dad worked. Victoria walked in. She didn't see me at first, was focused on the menu board. She looked tired. Much older than her 42 years. Gray showing prominently in her hair, no longer colored or styled. Deep lines around her eyes and mouth. Cheap clothes from discount stores, a faded cardigan, worn jeans. She ordered a small coffee, no fancy latte like she used to drink, and paid with exact change from her worn purse, counting out coins. She turned and saw me. Froze completely, coffee in hand. For a moment, I thought she'd leave. Just walk out and pretend she hadn't seen me. But she walked over slowly, hesitantly. Marcus. Victoria. Can I sit for a minute? I gestured to the chair across from me. What did I have to lose? She sat down slowly, clutching her coffee cup like it might escape. You look good. Successful. I saw an article about your company in the business magazine. Web Strategic is everywhere now. Thank you. I heard your company is worth a lot now. That you're considering selling? I've done okay, I said neutrally. She laughed bitterly, no humor in the sound. Okay. Right. Modest as always. She looked down at her coffee. I'm working retail now. At a department store in the mall. Minimum wage. Folding clothes, dealing with rude customers, standing on my feet for 8 hours. I said nothing. What was there to say? My father finally cut me off completely last year. Said I needed to learn to stand on my own 2 feet, that he'd enabled my helplessness long enough. So here I am. Standing. Barely. I'm sorry things are hard for you, I said, and I meant it. Not because I wanted to help, but because seeing her like this didn't give me the satisfaction I once thought it would. Just, nothing. Are you? She asked, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. Sorry, I mean. Or are you happy to see me like this? Getting what I deserve? I thought about it honestly. I'm not happy to see you suffering. But I'm also not responsible for your situation. You made choices, Victoria. This is where those choices led. I can feel sympathy for another human being struggling while also recognizing that you created this situation yourself. I know, she whispered, tears starting. I think about it every day. How stupid I was. What I threw away. The life we could have had. You threw away a marriage, I said. But that marriage was already broken. You were miserable with me, maybe you didn't realize it then, but you were. I can see that now, with distance and perspective. We weren't right for each other. Maybe, she said. But I didn't have to destroy everything to figure that out. I could have just left. Talked to you. Been honest. No. You couldn't. That would have required maturity and courage you didn't have. Maybe you have it now. But you didn't then. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. Are you happy? Really happy? Yes, I said simply. Very happy. Kids. 2. Sophia's 12, Daniel's 10. They're great kids. Something painful crossed her face, grief for the life she'd never have. That's wonderful. Really. My phone buzzed. Elena texting that she and the kids were 5 minutes away. I have to go, I said, standing. My family's meeting me for lunch. Victoria stood too, slowly. Of course. Thank you for talking to me. You didn't have to. Take care of yourself, Victoria. I mean that. She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. You too, Marcus. And I really am happy you found what you were looking for. I left her standing there with her cheap coffee and her regrets. As I walked out, I saw my family through the window, Elena laughing at something Sophia said, Daniel running ahead excitedly. And I realized, Victoria hadn't made me a millionaire. She'd freed me to become one. Today, 15 years after that nightmare family dinner, I'm sitting in my home office overlooking the city. Web Strategic Consulting is now worth $25 million. We've been approached by multiple acquisition offers. I'm considering selling and retiring early. My personal net worth, $15 million. Elena and I just celebrated our 14th anniversary. Our kids are thriving. Sophia wants to be an engineer. Daniel wants to play professional soccer. We have a good life. A real life. Built on honesty and mutual respect and actual love. Sometimes people ask me, do you regret how you handled the divorce? Was the revenge worth it? Here's my answer. I don't regret demanding what I was owed. Victoria and her family would have destroyed me if they could have. Instead, I protected myself and got compensated for 5 years of disrespect and betrayal. Did I take pleasure in Victoria's downfall? At first, yes. Absolutely. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But over time, that satisfaction faded. Because I realized something important. The best revenge isn't watching your enemy suffer. It's building a life so good you forget they exist. Victoria's betrayal gave me three things. Capital: the $1.7 million settlement gave me the resources to start my business. Motivation: the anger and humiliation drove me to succeed beyond what I might have achieved otherwise. Freedom: getting out of that marriage freed me to find someone who actually loved and respected me. So did my cheating wife make me a millionaire? Technically, yes. Her family's money gave me the initial push. But really? I made myself a millionaire. I always had the talent, the drive, the intelligence. I just needed to be freed from a relationship where I was constantly told I wasn't enough. Victoria taught me that the only person's approval I need is my own. The Sterling family taught me that money without character is worthless. And Chase? He taught me that karma is real, patient, and devastating. People say success is the best revenge. They're right. But let me add something to that. Success achieved despite someone's betrayal. That's not just revenge. That's justice. My cheating wife thought I was boring, inadequate, not good enough for her wealthy family. Today, I'm worth more than most of them. I built a company from nothing. I have a family that actually loves me. And Victoria? She's living in a studio apartment, working retail, regretting every choice she made. Did I destroy her life? No. She destroyed it herself. I just made sure she paid for the damage she did to mine. And you know what? I'd do it all again. Because the man I am today, the successful, confident, genuinely happy man, only exists because I refused to be a victim. I turned betrayal into opportunity. Pain into profit. Humiliation into empire. My cheating wife made me a millionaire. No. My cheating wife gave me a reason to become one. And that makes all the difference.